Beneath the surface of the earth lies a silence so heavy it swallows sound, a darkness so complete it feels alive. When divers entered the world's deepest known cave, they thought they were chasing records, mapping uncharted chambers, and testing human endurance. But what they brought back was something no one could have predicted. Their cameras shook, their voices cracked, and the few words they managed to speak after resurfacing sent ripples across the globe. Governments quickly moved to silence details, scientists scrambled to explain what defied explanation, and whispers of ancient secrets spread like wildfire. What could possibly lie so deep in the earth that even hardened divers broke down in fear? This was not just a dive. It was a descent into something far older, far more disturbing, and far more dangerous than anyone was prepared to confront. The story begins in a quiet valley surrounded by steep cliffs and endless forests. For centuries, the locals whispered about a cave hidden deep within the limestone mountains, a place no one dared to explore. They said it breathed at night, exhaling cold gusts of air that carried strange sounds. Travelers avoided the path, and even animals refused to go near it. Yet, to a team of divers chasing the edge of human exploration, those warnings only fueled their curiosity. They wanted to see how far down the earth could take them. The cave, already known among geologists as one of the deepest, stretched so far underground that no one had ever reached its bottom. It was a maze of flooded tunnels, narrow shafts, and black chambers where no light had touched for thousands of years. Getting in was dangerous. The divers had to squeeze through gaps barely wide enough for their bodies, while carrying tanks of air strapped to their backs. Every move had to be calculated. A single wrong turn meant getting lost in complete darkness. The descent started calmly. Their lights pierced the water, revealing walls covered in mineral patterns that looked like veins running through a living creature. As they swam downward, the water grew colder and heavier, pressing against their bodies as if the cave itself wanted them out. Hours passed, and the surface felt like a world away. Their radios crackled occasionally, but the deeper they went, the weaker the connection became. Soon, all they could hear was the hiss of their own breathing and the echo of water dripping somewhere far ahead. Then something changed. The walls widened unexpectedly, opening into a massive underwater chamber. The divers had entered what felt like a hidden cathedral of stone, its ceiling lost in shadows. Their lights reflected on the surface of the water, showing vast stalactites that looked like jagged teeth waiting to close in. The scale of the place was overwhelming, like stepping into a forgotten world untouched since time began. One diver later admitted that he felt like an intruder trespassing on sacred ground. At the far end of the chamber, they discovered a tunnel that plunged deeper. It was narrower and far more dangerous. The water seemed to resist them as if dragging them back, yet they pushed forward. Every instinct screamed at them to stop, but they could not turn away now. The tunnel curved sharply downward, and the light from their lamps revealed strange markings carved into the stone. Patterns that did not look natural. They were geometric, almost like symbols, etched with a precision that no rushing water or shifting rock could have made. The divers paused. They exchanged glances, their bubbles rising slowly in the still water. Who could have carved these symbols so far beneath the earth, in a place no human should have ever reached? One of them touched the markings, and the rock felt strangely warm despite the freezing water around them. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the cave groaned, a deep, rumbling sound that made the walls vibrate. Dust fell from above, clouding the water, and the divers panicked. It felt as though the cave itself was waking up. They should have turned back. Every instinct begged them to retreat. But curiosity is stronger than fear. They continued downward, hearts racing, as the tunnel opened into another chamber. This one darker, quieter, and colder than anything they had ever experienced. Their lights barely pierced the gloom, yet in that faint glow, something shimmered at the bottom. They swam closer, unaware that what they were about to uncover would change everything they believed about the world above. The deeper the divers swam, the more oppressive the silence became. Their lamps flickered against walls coated with an eerie black residue, unlike anything they had seen in other caves. It looked almost burned into the stone, yet there was no heat here, only a cold so sharp it bit through their wetsuits. The shimmering object at the chamber floor grew clearer, an unnatural structure resting at the bottom of the abyss. At first, they thought it was a pile of minerals, crystals formed over millennia. But as they approached, the shape betrayed design. It wasn't random. It was symmetrical, deliberate. Metallic lines crossed over one another, forming a lattice that seemed to hum faintly beneath the water. No natural process could explain it. The divers hovered, staring at something that had no business existing at such a depth. One of them reached out, his gloved hand brushing the surface. The moment contact was made, the water vibrated as though an unseen current had swept through. Their gauges spiked wildly, oxygen levels fluctuated, and the pressure inside their suits tightened against their skin. Fear clawed its way into their chests, but fascination kept them rooted. What they touched wasn't corroded. It wasn't ancient rock. It was smooth, seamless metal, yet unlike steel, bronze, or anything forged by modern hands. Symbols were etched along the object's side, similar to those they had passed earlier. They glowed faintly when touched, lighting up like veins of fire running across the surface. For a moment, the divers forgot to breathe. This was not a cave deposit. It was something constructed, something placed here long before recorded history. But by who, and why bury it so deep? Suddenly, the hum intensified. A pulse rippled outward, knocking them backward. Their lights dimmed, plunging the chamber into suffocating darkness. Only the glowing lines of the structure remained, pulsing like a heartbeat. Panic set in. Radios screeched with static, their equipment malfunctioned, and for the first time one of the divers screamed into his mask. Then came the sound. A low, resonant echo that wasn't water, wasn't rock, but something alive. It rolled through the cavern, a deep tone that seemed to sink directly into their bones. The cave trembled again, and fine cracks spread across the ceiling. Dust and debris rained down. If they didn't leave soon, they would be buried alive. But something in that sound froze them. It wasn't random. It was a pattern, almost like a voice, a message. They had stumbled into a place that was never meant to be opened. Kicking furiously, they began their ascent, but the cave seemed to shift. Passages that had been clear before now looked distorted, warped by shadows. Their lights revealed flashes of movement, figures in the water, shapes that dissolved when looked at directly. The divers were no longer alone. Something was watching. Something had been awakened. By the time they reached a stable section of the cave, their oxygen was dangerously low. They surfaced in a small air pocket chamber, gasping, their hearts pounding as the water dripped endlessly around them. One diver broke down, whispering that they had touched something forbidden, that whatever slept beneath had felt them. Another argued it was a discovery that could rewrite history, something the world deserved to know. But before they could decide their next move, the water beneath them shifted again, rippling unnaturally. Something vast stirred in the depths below, as though the chamber itself was breathing. And with it came the chilling realization. They hadn't just discovered the deepest cave. They had opened the door to something far worse. The journey back toward the surface should have been a relief, but every meter upward felt heavier, as though invisible hands were pulling them down. Their gear crackled with interference, their gauges flashing unreadable numbers. Worst of all was the sound. It followed them, faint at first like a whisper through stone, then stronger, pressing against their skulls. None of them spoke, but each knew they were hearing the same thing, a voice that wasn't theirs. It didn't sound human. The cadence was slow, deliberate, almost ancient, but the meaning was clear. It was calling them back. The divers pushed upward faster, hearts racing. Their lights flickered again, and in that strobe-like glow, they caught glimpses of things moving along the walls. Thin, elongated shadows clung to the stone, crawling upward with them. At one point, one diver swung his lamp directly at the wall, and nothing was there. Yet, when he turned back, his teammates swore they saw the shadow stretch, reaching toward him. The panic nearly caused them to split apart, but survival instincts kept them together. Finally, they reached the entrance shaft that would lead them closer to the surface. Relief surged, until they noticed the water. It was no longer the clear, cold liquid they had descended through. It was darker now, murkier, almost thick. Their lamp struggled to cut through it. Strange particles floated in suspension, swirling like ash. One diver swore it looked like fragments of bone. Pushing through, they rose until the first diver broke into open air. He gasped, pulling himself onto a rocky ledge, only to freeze in horror. The air wasn't fresh. It was heavy, metallic, like breathing rust. The chamber above looked different than when they entered. The walls seemed narrower, pressing inward, and the sound of dripping water had stopped completely. Everything was unnaturally still. The others emerged behind him, faces pale. No one dared speak. They all felt it, that they hadn't truly escaped the depth. Something had followed. Then, from the water below, a glow rose slowly upward. The divers scrambled back, their eyes wide as the surface began to shimmer. A faint blue light pulsed beneath, the same lines that had lit up on the object far below. Somehow, impossibly, the glow had spread upward through the cave system. The leader shouted for them to move, to get out before the entire cave collapsed. They scrambled through the tunnels, lungs burning, hands bleeding as they pulled themselves along jagged stone. Behind them, the water roared, as though something enormous was forcing its way upward. By the time they reached the surface entrance, dawn was breaking. They crawled out into the pale morning light, collapsing on the ground, trembling. For a few moments, silence returned. The forest swayed gently in the wind, birds chirped as though nothing had happened. But the divers could not shake the truth. They had brought something back with them. The glow of that chamber still burned in their vision. The voice still echoed faintly in their ears. And as they stumbled toward safety, each of them knew the world above had changed forever. The divers emerged into daylight, but daylight no longer felt the same. The sky above the valley appeared pale, drained of color, as if the world itself had shifted in their absence. Their bodies shook violently, their gear malfunctioned, and their voices cracked when they tried to speak. None of them dared to explain what they had seen, not yet. But each of them carried the same thought: the cave was no longer just a geological marvel. It was a gate, and something on the other side now knew it had been disturbed. In the days that followed, their return sparked immediate attention. Local villagers, who had long avoided the cave, noticed the divers looked ill, their skin pale, their eyes glassy as if they hadn't slept for weeks. They refused to enter the village, instead setting up camp outside, too restless to stay still. Word of their expedition spread quickly. Within days, government vehicles rolled into the valley, scientists followed, and soon the once quiet mountainside buzzed with activity. The divers, still shaken, were pulled into interviews. At first, they tried to downplay their experience. They spoke of narrow tunnels, freezing waters, and an unexplored chamber. But they avoided mention of the glowing lattice, the symbols, the voice. Yet the truth leaked out anyway. One of the younger divers broke during questioning, trembling as he admitted they had touched something that wasn't made by us. His words spread like wildfire. What wasn't made by us? What had been lying in the dark for thousands of years? Scientists descended on the site with high-tech equipment. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the cave, patterns too structured to be natural. Tunnels that should have been solid rock appeared hollow, arranged in geometric shapes stretching further than radar could trace. Something artificial lay buried deeper than any civilization should have been capable of building. Some experts claimed it must be a natural phenomenon, some rare geological quirk. But whispers among the team told a different story. This wasn't geology. It was architecture. The divers were banned from entering again. The site was sealed, guarded by armed men who warned curious locals away. Official reports claimed the divers' health had been compromised by a rare fungal infection found in deep caves. It was a neat explanation, one that fit into the world's logic. But the divers knew better. They weren't sick from fungus. They were sick from exposure to something humanity was never meant to touch. And then came the nightmares. Each diver reported dreams of being underwater, pulled deeper by unseen hands. They saw the glowing symbols burning behind their eyelids, heard the voice that had followed them upward. Some woke in the night gasping for air as though still trapped below. The youngest diver swore he heard whispers outside his tent, a language he couldn't understand but somehow felt he should. Their bodies deteriorated. Bruises appeared without injury. Their veins darkened as though something foreign coursed through them. Meanwhile, strange events unfolded near the valley. Animals vanished from the forest. The river that flowed from the mountain carried a faint, unnatural glow at night. Locals began reporting tremors that shook their homes, though no earthquakes were recorded on official charts. Electronic devices malfunctioned within miles of the cave. Radios caught strange frequencies, repeating tones that mimicked the same pattern the divers had heard. Scientists studying the site began disappearing one by one. First, a geologist vanished from his tent overnight, leaving only claw marks on the rock beside the cave mouth. Then, a technician monitoring radar scans was found babbling incoherently, his eyes wide with terror, repeating the same phrase, "It's awake." Soon after, all civilian researchers were dismissed. The cave became a restricted military zone, sealed off by fences and constant surveillance. But rumors cannot be silenced. A leaked photo showed a piece of the glowing lattice hauled from the depths, strapped to a military truck. Its surface still pulsed faintly, lines of blue light tracing across it like veins. Within hours, the photo spread across the internet. Debates raged. Was it proof of an ancient lost civilization, or evidence of something extraterrestrial? Governments scrambled to shut down the leak, but once the world had seen it, doubt took root. The divers, broken and haunted, realized they had become marked. One whispered during his final days, "It follows us. The cave isn't just in the mountain, it's inside us now." And with that, the descent into fear and chaos entered a new phase. The final descent into madness began not in the valley but across the world. Weeks after the discovery, strange reports surfaced from distant countries. In coastal towns, fishermen claimed to hear a low humming beneath the waves, vibrating through their boats. Deep sea sensors picked up unknown frequencies, matching the same pulse the divers had heard in the cave. Then came the disappearances. Divers exploring unrelated underwater caves vanished without a trace. Oil rig workers reported massive shadows moving beneath them, followed by malfunctions in equipment. Entire schools of fish washed ashore, their bodies unmarked but their eyes clouded as though they had seen something unspeakable. Back at the cave, military efforts to contain the anomaly spiraled into failure. Witnesses saw armored vehicles entering the valley, only for none to return. Strange lights were reported at night, glowing beams that pierced the sky like signals. Locals swore they saw figures moving in the forest, tall, thin, and silent. Livestock disappeared. Even birds abandoned the area, leaving the valley eerily quiet. One evening, a tremor shook the mountain so violently that villagers miles away felt the earth ripple beneath their feet. A thunderous roar echoed through the valley, louder than any storm, though no clouds hung in the sky. Then the glow returned, spilling out of the cave mouth like liquid fire. Witnesses described it as veins of blue crawling up the mountainside, spreading like roots through the forest soil. Whatever had been sleeping below was no longer confined. The surviving divers, those still barely clinging to sanity, watched the news unfold in horror. They realized too late that touching the lattice had not just awakened something. It had connected. The glowing lines they saw weren't merely decoration. They were conduits, part of a vast network buried deep within the earth, stretching far beyond one cave. The structure wasn't local. It was global. The caves were only access points. Panic erupted worldwide. Governments denied knowledge, but leaked transmissions revealed military briefings calling the event an emergence. Scientists tried to explain, connecting it to ancient myths of beings trapped beneath the earth, sealed away before humankind walked upright. Then, the divers began dying, not from sickness or trauma, but something stranger. Their bodies, found in their tents or homes, showed signs of drowning. Lungs filled with water though they had never gone near it. One diver was found with glowing lines etched faintly beneath his skin, identical to the symbols carved into the cave walls. His final words, scrawled shakily in a notebook, read, "Open the door. It's coming through us." The truth became undeniable. What the divers had found was not a relic, not ruins of a lost people. It was part of something alive, something vast, something the earth itself had been holding prisoner in its darkest depths. And now, because of one expedition, the locks had been broken. And now those wounds were open. The last recorded words tied to the incident, taken from a classified briefing before it vanished from public record, were simple and chilling. "It's not just awake, it's moving." And so, the mystery of the deepest cave remains sealed in silence, its true nature buried beneath layers of denial, fear, and secrecy. The divers who first touched the darkness never lived long enough to tell the full story, and the officials who tried to bury the truth only fueled greater suspicion. What lies beneath us may not be dead, may not even be sleeping. It may simply be waiting. The world carries on as if nothing has changed, yet the whispers remain, the pulses continue, and the shadows beneath the earth grow restless. Perhaps humanity was never meant to know what lives in the deepest places. Perhaps some doors should stay closed. But one thing is certain: the moment we looked into that abyss, it looked back. And now, the world will never be the same again.